Welcome to the Financial Liberty Podcast. Until you wake up from the American dream, financial uncertainty will be your American reality. Join Sam Legaspi and Koz Tsukamoto and their guests as they explore how you can attain financial liberty by uncovering truths that have been kept secret for decades. Have you ever played a game and didn't know the rules? How can you ever win? Learn the rules to the game and in turn, learn how to win. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Financial Liberty Project with Sam Legaspi and Koz Tsukamoto. Today we're going to be talking about something that they actually touched on in the last podcast. And if you have not heard that, go back and listen. There's a lot of great information in there. And we're going to be talking about the solo 401k. And I'm going to let the guys introduce what that is and what it's all about. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing great. Another great show for us today and a lot of valuable information, Koz. So it's actually pretty interesting. Before going into the solo 401k, because I think that's really a very important topic with so many small business owners out there, I think we want to go ahead and talk about something that just came across. It was actually a private letter ruling. And, Koz, we talk about PLRs regularly.
What are they?
They are rulings that are handed down by the IRS. And they are rulings that individuals, a lot of people don't realize that if they don't agree with a ruling they have with regards to the IRS and the taxes or the fines or the penalties they have to pay, they can actually go and have their day in court with the IRS. And
so they can appeal.
Oh, yeah. They can say, hey, man, no, I don't want to be spending this $1 million. That's not you're making.
What does it cost to do with PLR?
Well, that's the issue. Right? That's the issue, is that you got to hire a reputable organization to write the PLR for you. You just can't, take out a piece of paper or a napkin and start writing it down. And you've got to actually hire an organization to file the PLR, to write the PLR and make it presentable enough. So it's basically a law firm and present the PLR. And that PLR can cost, quite a bit of money. It could, as far as I'm concerned, I hear anywhere between $3,500 to $5,000, maybe $7,000 just to go ahead and file the PLR. And
that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of something. But a lot of times, because a lot of people do it by principle, right? They may not, their fine may just be $50, but they don't agree with the $50 fine, so it's all a function of principle. But then there are times where they go, "Hey, wait, what's going on here?"
Well, there could be a lot of money at stake.
Yeah, a lot of
so
exactly.
the fees would be very well justified.
Exactly.
But there's no guarantee, right? Obviously so you file a PLR, you're appealing a reversal in some ruling that was not in your favor, right?
Right.
And so you don't know if they're going to see it your way or not.
Now it's your day in court.
You could lose.
It's your day in court.
Right.
Yeah, and here's the issue with regards to it. As far as I'm concerned, it's one of the scenarios where you just don't know. It's kind of like an individual at the bank. You just don't know how that individual woke up that day.
Right. You can have the wrong guy from the tax court or from the IRS. Is it the tax court or the
IRS, and then it could go to the tax courts.
Okay.
Yeah. It could be an actual Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah, you can get the wrong person, deciding your fate, and so it could go either way.
Yeah, and here's the interesting part. The interesting part is that you and I, we've seen so many times where so many rulings have come out in contrast to what they have in writing. So what they have in writing many times isn't necessarily applied to the rules that they've announced. So there's sometimes significant contradicting.
Right. I've heard that. Yes.
Yeah, so this individual, it's actually PLR 201547010, and it came out in August, but it's just making the news wires as of late. And so basically, I'll just go ahead and summarize it. You had an individual who had his money at a financial institution, and he had asked his advisor to send a check to an outside investment that he wanted to invest in. So it was an outside investment, and what kind of investment, we just don't know what it was, but it was just an outside investment that he was going to own shares in. And
outside of what specifically?
Outside of his institution. So it's not part of the institution. Let's say his money is with a major firm, and so what he wanted to do on his own, there was whether he went to some organization and he found that there was an investment available to him that he can invest in shares, and it obviously got him thinking, and so got him thinking to the point where he was sold on investing in units and interest in that particular organization. So he went to his advisor and he asked for the money to buy shares ownership interest in that particular company, but he wanted to do it legally, wanted to do it right. So he told the organization that the shares have to be named appropriately, that it had to be named in the name of his IRA. And so the institution went ahead and they did everything correct, and they sent the check out. He got the check. He went over to the organization. The organization created an operations and a contract that actually named everything properly. So it looked like everything was good. Up until later on in the year when he received a 1099-R for the amount that he took out. So whatever amount that was, and let's just say it was $100,000 that he invested in, and I'm not sure if it was 100 or not, but let's just say it's 100. So at the end of the year, he received a 1099-R for $100,000. Now remember, he's thinking it's an IRA, and a 1099-R would only come around if there was a distribution, and he wasn't asking for a distribution. He was just asking for the money to go and invest in this company.
That would be a transfer.
It was, yeah.
And it would not be considered a taxable event under normal circumstances if it's done right.
If it's done right, but he obviously only had 60 days to make it right, and the money did not go to another institution because the organization that he invested in was not affiliated with another institution. It was a private party. So it ended up becoming a distribution. And so this individual was absolutely shocked, and he was like wondering, why in the world did this organization send this on out and everything was good? I got contracts and it was named properly. And this is something that a lot of retirees should really understand.
So was the money just mishandled?
No, it wasn't mishandled. It was basically it turned into an administrative type of thing from a corporation standpoint. There are institutions that for instance, his advisor, the institution he was working with, there are institutions that allow outside investments. His institution did not. And that was something that he wasn't aware of. So because his institution did not allow outside investments to a private party, that automatically became a situation where on the 61st day, it became a distribution and he received a 1099-R. That was a private letter ruling. Again, it was 2015-47010, and it came out last August, but it's hitting the waves now. And it's important because a lot of these PLRs come out regularly, and we try to do our very best to keep looking at them to try to find ones that are that make a lot of sense for us to go ahead and talk about. And I just figured this one really makes a lot of sense because, as you know, with the increase in individuals looking at alternative items to try to get better returns in a very low interest rate environment, it really opens up issues.
So what was he appealing? That he was asking the government to treat it as...
Because why is it being a distribution? Everything was right. Everything was fine. Why can't they hold it inside my IRA is what he was asking.
Okay. Did he lose the ruling?
He lost. Yeah, and he lost on the grounds. See, he wouldn't have lost on the grounds if the organization that sent the check allowed for outside ownership. But because that institution did not allow for outside ownership, he lost. So it wasn't necessarily the IRS they're saying, hey, this is fine as long as the institution that sent the money allows for this to be owned inside your IRA. But your institution doesn't allow it to be owned inside the IRA. So rightfully, they sent you a 1099-R and called it a distribution. And now you got to pay taxes and you got to pay penalties on it.
That kind of leads to another thought is, I had this conversation with some people yesterday about, how people always try to think of another way to do something. It's like reinventing the wheel. People invest in things, but there are, there's some there's good products out there. Some mainstream things. I'm not going to mention the types or anything, but isn't it uncanny how many people would like to have the conversation about, there's a better way to do this thing that's been proven for decades, but I've got a better way.
Yeah.
And they go try a better way. And oftentimes they get themselves in a whole bunch of trouble because it's uncharted territory or they're just not aware of the rules. And sometimes, the boring way to do stuff is sometimes the right way. It may not be exciting, but if it's a proven way, it may not be a bad way to just continue, doing it that way.
And sometimes it really is a matter of syntax, and sometimes it just really is a matter of operations that in this case, this individual had his money at an institution that did allow outside ownership, private investments. He would have no issues. And that's what the IRS had an issue with, is that the IRS said, no, it's fine. Everything is fine. But the problem is with your institution. The institution that has your money or that is safeguarding your money does not allow for outside investments. So we cannot allow for this reversal.
Right. So he paid taxes on that amount, plus paid the fee to file a PLR, and then he lost.
Yep.
Yeah. Ouchie, ouch.
Right. Because if you could look at it and where he's sitting, he's going, I should have no problems whatsoever filing this because everything was done legitimately in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
In his eyes. And he probably heard that it is okay for institutions to hold private investments inside their 401k plan or inside their IRA. And in this case, it just didn't work out for him. And there's just a ton of these out there. There's a ton of these out there. And what's really amazing, Koz, is that in many instances, very similar situations like this, we've seen opposite rulings. Situations.
Again, this is like who you get that day.
Who you get?
What time or what side of the bed did the person get up?
Right. I mean, was the person fed a breakfast or not?
Yeah. Now, what I understand about PLRs is that just because it's decided one way or the other, it doesn't mean that it's a law. It's just a ruling. There's a big difference between the two. So if you have a PLR that goes one way, it doesn't mean that the tax code is updated to be consistent with that PLR. And as you said earlier, the PLRs can actually be contradictory at times, right?
Contradictory in a big way.
Right. So it's just, it's I would say it's a decision made on an individual case. It can be used as a reference to argue for or against, something that you're appealing in the future. So they are interesting and useful, rulings to just know about if you're going to go do something and challenge, the tax authorities or the IRS. Yeah. All right, so what moving along.
Moving along. I just thought that was really cool to go ahead and find that stuff out. I was like, wow, hey, Koz, I think a lot of our people are going to be excited about this. We found a nice little gem. And from time to time, listeners, we do find these gems, these private letter rulings that don't necessarily affect everybody, but if it affects maybe just one out of 100 people, and we're able to tap into one life out of 100 people listen to us and we can make a difference. That's what, this is all about. The show is all about. So, we wanted to go ahead and preface a lot of these items because we want people to go and wake up and not have to worry one day. Right. And there are so many vehicles that are out there, and which vehicle is the right vehicle to utilize? And if we are utilizing that vehicle, are we maximizing the vehicle? And so I don't necessarily talk in jargon anymore. I mean, the fact is that there's these tools, and one of the tools I wanted to talk about today, Koz, that we know a lot about, and we've been talking to people about, is a solo 401k. And the solo 401k is like a 401k, but it's mainly for sole proprietors, just small businesses, individuals that don't necessarily have a tremendous amount of employees, like 10, 15, 1,000 employees. Prior to the solo 401k, what kind of vehicles were available to the masses that they utilized instead of a solo 401k prior to it?
Well, there's the everyday 401k. There's the IRAs. There's the SEP IRAs. There's some other things, but
like the Keogh, right?
There's
for like small businesses,
right?
And albeit they were great investments, a Keogh, and then it turned into a lot of people were starting to invest in a SEP IRA. Then you had simple IRAs. And what seems to have become more and more prevalent, at least on the surface, but not necessarily being utilized to its full potential, is a solo 401k. And what's cool about the solo 401k is that it's basically a 401k plan. So you've got the proper filing forms at the end of the year. It's basically, if you're a small business, you have this, and you have the ability to have employee contributions and employer contributions. And the great part about it is that it does allow for a Roth contribution, depending, of course, if your plan allows for it.
I love that.
Right, because I knew you would like that. That's why I want to go and bring that. So, talk about the Roth contribution when it comes to a 401k plan again.
Well, it's a lovely 4-letter word, and it's legal, and it's not offensive. But learn the word Roth. Roth is your friend. Yeah, I love Roth, and I like people that understand Roth love it because when they become elders, and when you're tired and you're feeling older and you just don't want to live a retired life of worries or rules or worrying about violations and then having to pay penalties and then just trying to keep all the different rules straight in your feeble mind. You just want simplicity. And so the Roth benefits, whether it's through an IRA or a 401k, give you that. It gives you a couple things. One, it frees you of very, very complicated rules, which most people will have to endure and live through because they will do a non-Roth type of retirement strategy. The other benefit is that if you have a Roth strategy, then when you're retired and you're taking money out of your Roth vehicle, you don't have to worry about paying any taxes on it because it's already been taxed. It's been taxed the day or the year that you've contributed to that type of vehicle. To me, the advantages of a Roth are tremendous. I like that strategy more than the taxable strategy, which is the more common or popular. And I don't know why it's more popular, but most people will do the strategy where they have to live by the rules of the IRS as an old person and have to pay taxes.
Yeah. You know what? Makes sense.
Yeah.
Long and winded, but you know what? It's precise. And that's what we're all about, man. Precision.
Yeah. So love the Roth.
So here's the cool thing about the solo 401k. All right. And I think one of the main aspects that people just don't necessarily, for the ones that have it, the solo 401k, they don't necessarily utilize it. And for the ones that don't necessarily know about the solo 401k, it's something that you definitely want to understand and put in your arsenal. And one of the key factors is this. Okay, so just like any type of retirement account, like any type of 401k plan, you're allowed to go ahead and have what's called employee contributions. And your employee contributions inside a solo 401k for 2019 is up to $19,000. So that means, and here's the interesting part, it's for dollar. All right. So dollar for dollar means that in theory, if you made $20,000 this year, you could put $19,000 into your solo 401k, traditional or Roth. All right. So you don't necessarily have to make a certain amount to go ahead and put up to 19. So in theory, if you just made 20 grand, you could put 19,000. I don't know.
So basically, you have a way to put 90% of your income away.
Or if you made 19,000, you can put 100%
of it.
The issue is that, of course, we have debt and we have bills to pay. So I don't think a lot of people are going to make $20,000 to put 19,000.
But there are people out there that do save, let's say, 75% of their income.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, it's true. There are people that do that.
And it's a solution for them.
Yeah.
And so what happens, so you have this $19,000, right? And that's below people. That's not below people. That's for people that are below the age of 50. And of course, it's $25,000 if you're above the age of 50. That's the contribution on an employee basis for the solo 401k. But here's where it gets really cool. It gets really cool because after that amount, you have two options that you can choose from. And of course, now this depends on your plan, okay? The plan documents that you put together. The majority of corporations, big companies, aren't allowed or aren't able, it's not inside their plan documents, to choose one of the options that I'm going to mention to you. But if this is available to you and you are a small business, you definitely want to look into this. And basically, let me go ahead and talk about the first option.
Well, as a business owner, if you decide to do a 401k plan, disagree or agree, Sam, you designed the 401k plan to be the way you like it. So if you want the feature, you can include it.
You got to find a service provider that will do it. And then also you got to make sure that if you have employees that they run a test, and if you don't fail the test, then you can as well. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of aspects to it. But here's the thing. We're just going to utilize just one employee. That's the example we utilize.
Oh, okay.
So we have this one employee, and so they make $100,000 a year. And so let's just say they put $19,000 in their solo 401k. All right. So one of the options they can do is what's called a profit contribution, an employer profit sharing contribution. So after they reach the maximum of $19,000, and let's just say that they're below the age of 50, so they have an employee contribution of $19,000. They, as employers, can also put money into the 401k or the solo 401k. Okay,
so in this example, is that employee the same person as the owner of the business?
Same person. Right?
Okay, so there's one person in this picture.
Right, one person in this picture. So he's the employee and the employer. So as an employee, he puts $19,000. And as an employer, legally, he can put, depending on whether he's a corporation or a sole proprietor, he can put anywhere between 20 to 25% of his earnings. So if he makes $100,000, let's just say he could put 20%, which is $20,000. So that $20,000, add that to the 19, that's $39,000. And you're thinking about, that's pretty good, right? But here's the thing, is that you can actually max out at $56,000. So he's short a little bit. He's short. You can max out at 56, 62 if you are above the age of 50. So here's where the other element comes into play. The other potential option, if it's in your plan documents and you have it written in your plan documents when you set the plan up.
Right.
Okay. Is there is what's called an after-tax feature. So forget about the profit-sharing contribution, the employer side. The after-tax feature, which in many cases we discussed as spillage. So once you reach that 19,000 max, you can continue to keep putting money into your solo 401k and reach that $56,000 limit really quickly. And that money's all after tax. That's the caveat. But it's not really the caveat, because you just explained a few minutes ago the advantages of a Roth. Because what happens is that if you take that $19,000 max, employee contribution, and you subtract from it the $56,000, which is the legal contribution limit for the year, that turns into $37,000. So let's just assume this person who makes $100,000 puts in his 19, and he goes ahead and he funds it with the rest, and he reaches his $56,000. That $37,000 difference, that amount, can actually be rolled over and converted into a Roth.
Now, so you're assuming in this example, Sam, that his plan does not allow a Roth type of contribution?
No, I am. So his plan does allow. His plan does allow. So the solo 401k, he has a solo 401k, and there's two things that he has. So we're assuming one person, and in one person, he's able to have those two options. The first option is to have profit sharing at 20% or 25% of his earned income, right, depending on what type of status he is, or after-tax contributions once he reaches that $19,000 threshold as an employee. The other part, too, is that the plan documents have him as a Roth, so he could choose between traditional and Roth contributions. So the $19,000 he can contribute as Roth after tax. So that $19,000 is Roth.
Okay.
But the after-tax amount after that $19,000 up to $56,000, so we add that difference is $37,000. That's all after tax. That can be converted into a Roth
by moving it out of the plan. Let's say at the end of the year, into an outside Roth IRA.
Correct, and that's what's called the mega backdoor Roth contribution.
Right. It's I don't know if I want to describe it as a loophole in the tax laws, but you can do that. I mean, it's perfectly legitimate,
and it's based on your plan documents. That's the issue.
Right, and it's a beautiful thing because
it's a beautiful thing.
It's a more common knowledge that you can only put away a small amount into a Roth IRA every year.
Right.
So, you can get around that, and that's why they call it the backdoor strategy to put a lot more than that limit, which is $6,500 or something like that.
Right. And this is the mega. This is the mega backdoor. This is like, oh man, mega shark, megalodon. And see, that's the thing is that let's just say you did $19,000, Koz, in your Roth contribution in the solo 401k. So that's $19,000. That's after tax. That's Roth. That money will never be taxed when you take it out, just as long as you have a seasoned Roth account to put it into. And we can talk about that in a bit. But you also have that $37,000. So if you look at it, you have $56,000 every year in Roth money that you're saving and putting aside.
Right.
You're really maximizing your contributions. And you know what? And the issue is that for all the people that have a solo 401k, they're not necessarily utilizing this. And a lot of them make the mistake of not adding it in their plan documents to begin with. And then of the ones that do have it in their plan documents, they only max out maybe at 19, or maybe they just get to 15, or maybe 12, or maybe 10. They just don't necessarily go to the 19 and push it to the limit. They've got a sports car, Koz, that can go 200 miles an hour. But unfortunately, the majority of the people that have a solo 401k do not go past fourth gear, and they don't necessarily get past 65 or 70 miles an hour, even though they have that vehicle that can go much, much, much faster.
Right.
So yeah.
So you've heard it here on the Financial Liberty Podcast, the mega backdoor Roth strategy.
The mega backdoor Roth strategy, and the things that people want to really consider in utilizing the mega backdoor is making sure they find a service provider that can actually provide the plan documents to include those particular options, as well as make sure the plan documents include the Roth strategy in there as well, the Roth contribution part of it too. And oftentimes people say, okay, solo 401k, let me just go ahead to this popular firm or this popular firm and this popular firm. And they get it, not necessarily knowing that they didn't ask the right questions, and that particular vehicle that they created doesn't have that engine that can allow them to go 200 miles an hour. They've got an engine that can go to 100 miles an hour. And so it becomes another foray into redesigning all these aspects just so that we can get you to where you want to be.
So for our listeners, if you feel like you're confined to the $6,000 annual contribution limit for a Roth IRA, you've just now heard and you've heard of one strategy that allows you to put a lot more than that away. But there are other strategies as well. So, you can always give us a call at 800-640-8105 to ask more questions, get more information on that. And again, our number is 800-640-8105.
And, I think it's probably wise to also mention that when it comes to a solo 401k, that there are fees with regards to setting up these things. It's not free necessarily. And you want to definitely do your due diligence. You want to make sure that you work with an administrator as well as a service provider and possibly a TPA to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck. But you definitely do want to make sure that you have all the bells and whistles when it comes to dealing with a solo 401k. And for all those individuals that are in private practices, maybe in real estate or in mortgage or they own their own business from home or even the medical field, a solo 401k can be a very, very advantageous solution to making sure that you can catch up, and not only catch up, but catch up in the right way, because the majority of corporate America does not have this feature because they failed the test. There's a test, and unfortunately they failed the test and they're not able to utilize the after-tax portion of this particular strategy that would allow the mega backdoor. But some corporations actually do, and that's actually pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Love it. Live it. Yeah.
Koz is tired. We woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Got 2 days in a row, right? So I'm a little giddy.
Yep. But hey, that's all, folks.
All right, guys. That was great. I love it. I have never heard of that strategy. That is something that, as a small business owner, I should probably be looking into. So I appreciate the information, and I know that you already gave the number out once and maybe even twice. I'm going to ask for it for a third time. For those that have any questions about what they've heard, one thing that came across very clearly: get some professional advice. Find out, seek out a professional. If you have one, ask them about it. If they don't have the answers, we know who does. And Koz will give you that number again.
That's 800-640-8105.
8105. Love it. All right. Thank you guys so much for your time. This is a fantastic podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you all for listening to the Financial Liberty Project podcast with Sam Legaspi and Koz Tsukamoto. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Sam and Koz come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at the Financial Liberty Project, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
It's that time again where the call of the open road makes its way. We hope good fortune finds you on your own personal road. And until next time, we thank you for listening to the Financial Liberty Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.